Welcome to a special edition of Channel 6 Sports. I'm Kelsey Williamson today. It's just you and me, Mike.
It's just me today. That's okay. Hey, we're going to talk some football, though.
We are going to talk some football, and not just UCA, but the whole Southland Conference. It was a massive week here for the Southland Conference. Few upsets, few things that we didn't really know what happened. The standings changed a lot. What did you think about the week?
Well, first, Red Beans and Rice Bowl right here at UCA, the McNeese State game. That was a very competitive ball game. A fumble late for UCA, and the momentum really changed. That game, 28-13, propelled McNeese State to the top. They're still undefeated. They look like they have a clear path to the playoffs. It looks like they can take care of everybody in the Southland. UCA, that's only their first loss of the season. And like you said, it was a big weekend everywhere else. Some upsets. Stephen F. Austin pulled an upset at Southeastern Louisiana, 28-27. So that gives Southeastern Louisiana back-to-back losses. That's big. UCLA only has one. Sam Houston State only has one. Lamar comes in. They got beat by Northwestern State, a team that hadn't even won a conference game yet. Another big upset. So UCA really got some big help this past weekend. If there was a weekend that they could lose, it was last weekend because the other teams did lose. So after Lamar, you have Southeastern. Incarnate Word is a team that's not going to be able to make it into the conference, and it doesn't matter anyway. Abilene Christian. So Stephen F. Austin, they have too many losses. It really sets up well for UCA and a few other teams.
And the game wasn't exactly a whitewash. The score sort of seems like they could have blown them out a little bit, but it wasn't. UCA was up 3-0 going into the half, a game purely based on defense the entire time. After the second half, it seemed like McNeese came out with a bit of fire in their belly. They came out and scored a touchdown in the third quarter, and then in the fourth quarter they were able to score 21 points. So UCA held the Cowboys to 0 points in the first half, but they seemed to get some momentum rolling, some poor coaching choices, as Coach Campbell said he was going to take the blame for that one. A few interceptions. You saw Hayden Hildebrand go down, which then you got Kirk in, who's a true freshman, and he ended up fumbling the ball when he...
Right.
I mean, you're playing the number one defense, and you're a true freshman. I mean, he was sort of thrown in the deep water there. But I feel like that was a good experience for him, even if he didn't exactly step up, didn't get a lot of the ball.
True.
He only got a small amount of time with the ball, but he got taken back out. Hildebrand, prone to injury, keeps injuring that shoulder of his, but he got back in there and wasn't able to complete the job, but I think he gave it a good effort.
Yeah, and that game for UCA is a good measuring stick game. Okay, that's the best team in the conference. That's going to be one of the best teams in the entire FCS. If come playoff time, you wouldn't be surprised if you saw McNeese State in the championship game by any means.
And if it wasn't for a couple of those interceptions or fumbles, UCA would have had it their way.
Right, they were up 13-7 before that return for a touchdown, and that, I mean...
Which made it 13-14.
Right.
But then they came back and took the lead again. The league changed a few times, but then all of a sudden, towards the end of the game, the Cowboys just drifted away from them, especially with that long interception for a touchdown. That didn't exactly help the Bears.
That's right. Okay, so then talking about the rest of the teams in Southland Conference, what about the rest of their schedules? What do you know? All these teams are going to be playing each other come these next couple of weeks. McNeese State, they play Northwestern State. Yes, they should win, but Northwestern State is an upset-minded team. Their season has been turned upside down. What do you know? They pulled an upset last week against Lamar. Next week for McNeese State at Abilene Christian. Abilene Christian isn't playing well, but once again, you never know. Sam Houston State at home for McNeese State. That's going to be one of the best games all year long in the Southland Conference. That's at McNeese State. We'll see if they can pull that off. They have a bye, and their final game is at Lamar. Once again, all four of these teams in the top four, UCA, Lamar, McNeese, and Sam Houston, all going to be playing each other. Sam Houston State, they have probably the easiest schedule of anybody left. They have Nichols, A&M Commerce. They are at McNeese. They have Northwestern State at home, and then they have at UCA. They have 3 home games compared to 2 road games. UCA at Lamar. That's going to be a tough game this weekend for the Bears. That was a really competitive game here last year. Lamar, I think, snuck up on the Bears a little bit last year, and they have an offense that can compete. Cade Harrington.
Well, I'm about to mention something about Cade Harrington.
Ooh.
He's leading the conference. He's number 1 rusher in the conference at the moment. Dominique Thomas is number 2 in the conference. So number 1 versus number 2, there is a bit of a drastic difference in the numbers as we've seen of lately. Cade Harrington's averaging 252 yards a game.
That's amazing.
It's something that you don't usually see in the Southland Conference. Dominique Thomas still performing 101 yards per game, so not as much, but he's still in second position. I think that this game is going to be purely, again, based on the defense and who can run the ball more.
That's right. UCA, Coach Campbell, they threw 51 times, and he said in the press after the game, the post-game press conference, he was like, I cannot believe we threw 51 times. We cannot throw 51 times.
But, I mean, they were forced to throw 51 times
That's
because the defense for the Cowboys was so tough. every time they ran the ball, they were only getting 1, 2, 3 yards at a time.
Yes, and the big difference in the numbers between Cade Harrington and Dominic Thomas, Cade Harrington is shouldering most of the load for Lamar, opposed to, Dominique is sharing time with Blake Beasley.
Jeff Anderson.
Jeff Anderson also gets in. You have Kelton Warren as well. So, Dominique is going to get his carries. Even last week against McNeese, they fed him the ball plenty of times to try and do it, but McNeese just had a good game plan, and their defense is so quick.
Well, the leading rushing teams in the Southland Conference: Lamar number 1, Stephen F. Austin number 2, Sam Houston number 3, Southeastern Louisiana number 4, McNeese 5, UCA 6. Now, UCA just played the Cowboys, who are in 5th position.
Right.
They still have to play the top 4 rushing offense teams in the conference. How do you think they're going to match up?
Well, the good thing for UCA, 3 of those 4 are at home. Southeastern Louisiana coming up this
homecoming
2 weekends or next weekend. Then you have Sam Houston State at the end of the year, and also in between there you have Stephen F. Austin.
Which is going to be a big game because ex-UCA football coach Conk is coming back to town.
That's right, and hey, if UCA has showed over the last couple of weeks, they're going to stop the run. Houston Baptist, a team that had run for over 250 yards against Abilene Christian and Sam Houston State, UCA held them to -9 rushing yards. UCA did a great job. McNeese State only had 160 yards of total offense in the Red Beans and Rice game.
Well, what about the leading quarterback in the Southland Conference at the moment, Hayden Hildebrand?
Yeah, averaging the most yards.
He is. He was second stringer. Some might say he was 1A, 1B with Taylor Reed. He's really stepped up and he's really came into this role not acting like he didn't know what he was doing. He came in, he's performed so well. Before this game, he was actually had the most efficiency as well. But he's still leading the conference as a quarterback with the most yards. Is this something you expected from him?
Tell you the truth, no, you wouldn't expect it because, and it's something you can't plan for, but this year, whether it's UCA, Southland Conference, or the entire college football landscape, there's a lot of injuries this year. And once again, UCA has had an unfortunate injury at the quarterback position, but if there's a team that's dealt with this problem more than once in the past couple of years, it's definitely UCA, with even going back to Wendrick Smothers and giving Reed a chance and Reed getting a chance in for Ryan Howard. I mean, it just keeps happening. So Hayden Hildebrand, like they always said, hey, we prepare like we're the starter. Well, that you have to take that as 100% fact now because he came in right away at Northwestern State. They didn't skip a beat, got that huge win. That propelled them to a 3-game win streak. They just suffered their first loss. Yes, Hayden didn't play probably up to his standards in that game, but Coach said, you can't blame where he's gotten us right now.
Oh.
If you would have told Coach you're 3-1 in conference, you're 3-3 overall, Coach would have taken that 10 times out of 10.
And we've seen Hayden go down a couple of times. He does seem to be prone to a shoulder injury that keeps on occurring.
Right.
He went
Similar
down.
to Taylor Reed. Isn't that crazy?
I think it's actually the same injury. He didn't fully recover, but then Taylor Reed went out. He was almost there, throwing back in, and I don't think he's been able to fully recover from that injury. Saw him go down during the game. Saw the coaches yell, stay in. We need to keep you in there right now. We saw him pass the ball off. It's not his throwing shoulder, so it's not as bad. But then when he went down again, he landed on a funny angle on that shoulder, and that's when he did come out and Kirk went in. He did return to the game later on, but I'm pretty sure he was banged up and was iced up after that.
And you could tell he was banged up because his throws, even though it's not a throwing shoulder, that you still have to go through the motion, with the ball here. You're moving that off arm a lot as well. And it seemed most of his throws were short into the ground. The receivers were having to dive all night long to try and make great catches for him. And you can't fault him for wanting to go out there and fight and be tough. And it's a big game. Coaches want him in there as well. That was everything. That was for the lead in the conference. If Taylor Reed, which we saw him back at practice last week, and hopefully we'll see him maybe this week at practice, getting more snaps. And coaches let us know that he's getting there, throwing the ball a little bit more. And
well, we saw him practicing. After we saw him practicing, we then saw him on the sidelines, dressed out, throwing the ball. I thought, are we going to see him in for a couple of snaps? He didn't enter the game, but I feel like this week against Lamar, we might see him in there.
He probably will have a chance if he's progressing as fast as it kind of sounds like it, but if by no means they don't need to rush it. Hayden Hildebrand, even if he's an 85%, you got to go with Hayden right now because he's playing hot. And I know the offense, the way they performed against McNeese State, they're going to want to come out and play just similar to how the defense were kind of embarrassed week 1 against Samford. They came back against Oklahoma State and played a much better game, and since then the defense has taken control of this team.
Well, let's talk about this defense. McNeese had the #1 defense in the Southland Conference.
Not no more.
Not no more. UCA has stepped up into that position. They may have lost this week, but the defense from UCA They're, I think, the biggest threat in the Southland Conference at the moment.
I think that's a great argument to put out there. I mean, there's no defense that's playing harder than UCA at this point in time. Teams, they've shown that they can stop the run, and even though McNeese isn't a great passing team, McNeese couldn't throw the ball against them. Abilene Christian, they came in averaging, at the time, their quarterback had the most yards. Parker McKenzie had the most yards in the Southland Conference. He didn't do anything against them. Northwestern State's offense couldn't get to a rhythm. They have some outstanding athletes as well.
Last week they held, not this game just gone, but the week before, they held the offense to -9 rushing yards.
That's right, Houston Baptist, yeah.
If Houston Baptist can't even get 1 rushing yard, that's saying something about the defense.
Yes, and it's not just 1 or 2 players. It's starting to become an entire cast of players. The depth is showing up. We're starting to see names in the box score. You know, George Odom has been leading every week, but now, you know, Tremont Smith is a young sophomore who leads the teams in interceptions.
Yeah, 2 interceptions at the moment as well. This defense is holding the offense that they've played to an average of 270 yards. That is almost half of what the last team in this conference is holding them to. Houston Baptist, 516 yards. So obviously they're not at the same level, but I mean, the defense of UCA is definitely not someone to sleep on.
In 2015, if your defense is giving up fewer than 300 yards, with today's offenses and gimmicks and gadgets, that is awesome. You can't ask for anything better than that. And Coach Campbell knows that, and he knows the identity of his team right now, that he's got to put his defense in great situations. You know, maybe earlier in the season where it might be a situation on 4th and 2, 4th and 3 from the 40-yard line, the opposing team's 40, he might not be going for it now. Instead, you're punting it deep, hopefully inside the 10-yard line. You're putting your defense out there because you know your defense can score just as well as your offense because UCA's defense is playing so well.
Well, Jonathan Woodard is 5 in the conference at the moment with sacks, having 3 total. Behind him, Derek Floyd.
Yeah.
Derek Floyd has
quietly having a good season, isn't he?
He's having a great season out there. I think he's someone that's always been there. He's always been sort of starting or stepping up, but this season I feel like he has really shown out.
Yes, and that defensive line, you know, isn't it funny? At the beginning of the year, we were saying, we haven't heard much from Jonathan Woodard. The stats aren't there. And
wait, hang on. Well, you were saying that, or I was saying that? Because I know I didn't say that. I've had faith in Jonathan the whole time.
We were all kind of wondering. You know, we just maybe not saying, oh, well, he's not getting his numbers, but we're used to seeing a sack or 2 a game.
Someone that gets Freshman of the Year, All-American, conference team players, first team conference. You did expect a lot from him, but they didn't have quite a good game against Stanford, and that was a game where they were finding themselves as a team coming out against Oklahoma State. That was a game I don't think anyone expected them to win, and they held them within 10 points in the first half. So that was when this defense really proved to everyone else in the Southland Conference that they better wake up because the defense at UCA will be a big threat this season.
The slow start for the defense might have actually helped them. If you look at it, the slow start and getting beat deep had them working on the fundamentals, had them say, you know what, next guy up, if you can't perform, we're going to get a younger guy out there. And now the Cardell Best starts showing up, the other defensive lineman, the young freshman or sophomore out there. You know, the linebackers, they have senior leadership with DJ Holland, but they're also getting more guys working in behind them. And the safeties, the back 7 has been great for UCA.
Do you think that UCA this week will be able to hold Cade Harrington to how many yards rushing?
I would say, okay, so every game, you know, going into the Houston Baptist game, we heard we have to keep these guys under 100. That was the team's goal then. Well, they had them -9 yards. That's 109 yards under that goal.
This guy is averaging 258 yards by himself.
So maybe 100 is a pretty good, good number
aim
for this
But
one.
I think even 100 they'll hold him down to. It's hard. You play a team such as McNeese who has a really strong defense, but UCA's defense is just as strong, and they don't like to run. You've got Jonathan Woodard, a 6'6" guy who's a real good potential NFL scout they're looking at. You've got Derek Floyd, who we said, who's 6th in the conference at the moment in sacks. You've got DJ Holland, one end. You've got Ricky Wyatt, linebacker on the other end.
Playing wonderful football right now.
You've got Garrett Sharp, who's interchanging with the both of them. I think this defense is going to be pretty hard to run on them.
Yes, and if their game plan is going to be mainly, it's just, if you had to throw a percentage on it, maybe 60-40, stop the run 60%. And that's something right now that they're doing so well. If you have a team that's, we're predicated on running the ball, kind of like McNeese was, and McNeese wasn't able to run the ball, I think UCA is going to be able to stop him again. I think 100 yards, that would be great. If you hold Harrington 156 yards under his average, that's just outstanding.
I think the only thing this week that UCA needs to look out for is their offense. Purely because if this defense can step up, they're defending, coming back off the field, having a rest, and having to go straight back out there. Hopefully Taylor Reid might be able to come in. Not saying Hayden Hildebrand isn't performing well, because he is, but It's time, I think, that Taylor Reid, with the senior leadership that he brings, hopefully has got back to 100% recovery. He can go back out there. Might be interchangeable with Hayden because it's going to be his first game back, but I think that UCA could really use his leadership out there against Lamar. This is a must-win game for UCA. Not saying they can't make the playoffs if they lose it, but head coach Steve Campbell did say in his press conference after the loss to the Cowboys that all they need to do is beat Lamar. I think he emphasised it about 5 or 6 times. There's nothing else to look forward to except beat Lamar. Beat Lamar. So I think that's going to be his main focus this week. Doesn't matter how they do it. Doesn't matter how they win. They need to focus on beating Lamar.
Yeah, and you know, my coach showed with him. He said that's right. We have to kind of go back to the basics again. And sometimes, you know, a loss, the Samford loss was a good loss. When you look back at it now, it really opened their eyes.
I think it helped them a lot.
Yes, they thought, oh, we're going to be this offensive team. You know, our defense, they were confident coming in their defense. And that game, wow, I mean, Samford just outclassed them in every way possible in that game. Oklahoma State, they fixed so many things against a very good football team, a top 25 football team in the country. And then they got that bye week at a good time. They got a bye week. And Northwestern State, they took off. So this team is moving in the right direction, and that's crazy how the offense is now, you know, they're not playing as well, and that defense is playing so much better, and the defense is carrying this team. And at this point in time this season, Taylor Reid coming, if that defense is playing so well where you can keep Taylor Reid healthy, I wouldn't be surprised if you don't see him at Lamar. I couldn't put a percentage or, you know, what confidence what I think he's going to do. I think having him back for Southeastern, if you get him another week of rest, Southeastern will be a big game. Stephen F. Austin, when you start hitting those home stretches, those home games are going to be, they have to win. They've lost a game at home now, they have to win.
And it's one game they definitely didn't want to lose. The Red Beans and Rice Bowl is something that the trophy they've played for. McNeese was the first team to beat them on the stripes here. They wanted that revenge. They went out there, they hadn't lost a conference game. They wanted that perfect record and they wanted to be the leaders of the Southland Conference. Unfortunately, they weren't able to get that, but I don't think they're going to let that worry them. It's in their back of their minds because they don't want to lose another game, but I think Lamar's, I think it's not a guaranteed win for them, but I think it's a 70-30 win for them.
I think they have it this week. It sets up well. Lamar is going to be a very angry football team, and UCA, is a very angry football team following this loss because the defense played so well in that game. Just the mistakes, the turnovers. UCA had not turned the ball over at 3 straight games. They turned the ball over 5 times against McNeese State. So 2 angry football teams. It's going to be a great matchup down in Lamar.
They need to make sure that they reduce their fumbles. They don't have interceptions because those are easy points. When they've got control of the ball, that defense is doing their job, getting off the field and having to come straight back out. That's not going to hurt them. If anything, it's just going to hinder them.
That's right. The offense has to put together some longer drives, give that defense a rest. The defense has to do so much. They're banged up as it is. You know, that's a rough job. And Lamar, with their type of offense, again, you're going from a very physical game against McNeese State, played more in the trenches, and Lamar is kind of going to spread it back out a little bit. This is a team that came in, and the game last year, I can't remember the exact score, but it was above 40, and it was back and forth. So it's going to be a different style game, so they have to be ready.
Well, I think it's definitely going to be an interesting game. Thanks for joining me, Mike. I'm Kelsey Williams, and thank you for tuning in for another special edition of Channel 6 Sports.